It's Friday, and here we are. I'm in California, Los Angeles, on the West Coast, and wherever you are across the United States, if you're on the East Coast, you're very welcome. If you're in the middle, you're very welcome. And if you're on the border with Canada, no, you're very welcome. We're going to spend the next couple of hours together. This is what we do here on Backchannel. We take a little look through some of the news that's breaking this morning, some of the big stories of the day, and we just get to know each other, and you can be part of the show. All you have to do is talk to your Echo Show device. Use your activation word, followed by say, and then your message. And then it presents itself here. Literally, I can hear you, well, I can see what you have to say, and I will bring it into the program using the skills that, the small skills, the one short, small skill that I possess. And we're here every day, and whenever you want to turn Backchannel on, you just ask your Echo Show device to open Backchannel. And if it's the first time you've done this, it'll ask you your name and where you're from. But if it's not the first time, then it will remember this information, and then you can just chat to it without having to go through that kind of whole setup process. It's very clever. So Backchannel, as you probably know now, is the only place you can listen to, watch, and chat with hosts live right here on your device. And I'm here Monday through Friday between 9 and 11 Pacific. And I thought we'd get straight into the action today. You know, I think you understand the concept that we're dealing with. This is the 5th day of this launch, and certainly for this program. And if we haven't worked it out by now, then really we should probably, just leave it here. But I think we've got it. We've got it down. You know what you're doing. I kind of know what I'm doing. I moved my ring light today so it's not reflecting, because someone said to me that I had 2 giant illuminated pupils. I look like a Jawa. So that's now been moved, and hopefully this is more of a acceptable visual, because it's very hard, if you wear face furniture, a spectacle, getting rid of reflections is very difficult. I was considering wearing them without the lenses, and then I realized I wouldn't be able to see. And that's obviously quite a big part of this whole kind of spectacle thing, I don't want to make a spectacle of myself, but this is what I'm having to work with. So we're going to jump into the morning newspapers. We'll zigzag across the United States and see which the big stories are that are kind of making the headlines this morning. And we're going to start right here in Southern California with the Los Angeles Times for this Friday. It's November 12th today. November 12th. It's 4 days till my birthday. And I don't know how many days till your birthday. I don't have enough data at this stage. Let's take a look at the headline. Perfect storm hits students is how the LA Times is leading this morning. They say after months of pandemic isolation, Chris Hodgkiss expected a celebratory return to campus for his senior year at US Santa Barbara. Instead, he and hundreds of fellow students have found themselves hammered by another crisis, a major housing crunch. Yes, Hodgkiss had to endure a leaking roof, soggy bedding, and power failure that shut down the ceiling fan, refrigerator, and lights for 6 weeks. He had no shower and no toilet, and that's because he lives in a van. It's his only affordable housing. Isn't that crazy that this is happening? We talked a little bit about students and the cost of being a student and having to take secondary jobs to pay for tuition on the show yesterday. But this morning we're looking at the reality for a lot of students, and that is living in the car. He says, I was upset, stressed, and hopeless that I couldn't find any affordable housing. He's a communications major from Camarillo. It sometimes sucks to live in a van, he said, but there was no other choice. So we're going to be discussing this a little bit later, but that's a very interesting story. I was upset, stressed, hopeless that I couldn't find any affordable housing is the kind of subheading on the front of the LA Times this morning. Backers say plan isn't just for kids. This is a story about Democrats promoting childcare, preschool overhaul as help for families and employers. And it says largely overlooked amid the fights on Capitol Hill over immigration, drug pricing, and paid family leave, Democrats plan to transform how the nation provides early childcare stands out as one of the most expensive and sweeping provisions of their $1.85 trillion social safety net bill. Has it suddenly gone up by 10 million? I thought it was 1.75 trillion. It's now 1.85 trillion, apparently. So that's something to consider. Okay, let's take a look at what else. Oh, let's just continue the story a little bit. Costing $390 billion, the proposal would provide universal preschool access for 3- and 4-year-old children. It's the largest expansion of free education since public high school was added about 100 years ago. I find it very interesting there's been so much pushback about this, from Republicans. I mean, why wouldn't they want children? Because there's plenty of poor Republicans, Poor people are not just Democrats. In fact, you might argue that there are more poor Republicans, It's very interesting to me that why the lawmakers would not support this, but they've been all of these kind of social policies that Biden's put together in this bill. I was looking on Twitter yesterday, and one congressman listed all of these things like free preschool and childcare and all these things, and he was like, "Look at all of these radical socialists," and I was like, "Whoa! Do you not have kids? There's nothing radical. There's nothing socialist about it. It's just normal." And paid family leave, I think, is obviously the biggest one. Currently, there's nothing. There's 0 paid family leave. Are you aware of that? Nothing. And now they are talking about doing 12 weeks, and they're not going to be able to get that through. And it's really? Because in England, it's 38 weeks of paid family leave. It might even be 39 weeks. And then if you go to Scandinavia, it's even more. And they're doing it for dads as well now. I think in Europe, don't dads get 2 weeks paid family leave in Europe? And I think it might be going up to 4 weeks. And they're trying to get parity with mums. You see? It's very interesting to me that when we live here in the United States and we think that this is the bar. But this is why it's so important to travel. And this is why it's so important to relocate temporarily, just to live in other countries and kind of soak up cultures and get a sense of perspective on what it's like where you live. Have you seen that Michael Moore documentary called Where to Invade Next? It's very interesting because, he basically goes to every country that is the best at something. So if it's education, for example, he goes to Sweden and they look at how Sweden's education system is. And, because every sector or genre has a league table. So, America, in terms of literacy and numeracy, will be at a certain point. I think it might be something like 25th in the world for literacy. So he goes to the country that's at the top. And I don't know why the documentary is called Where to Invade Next. I guess that's a play on, America kind of taking out these countries. It's very interesting. Anyway, it's a good documentary. Democrats argue that parents, typically mothers, could not be full participants in the workforce if they are also bringing up their children. So that's the LA Times. There's one more story here. Oh yeah, this is about President Xi. It says, only 2 leaders of China's ruling Communist Party have been powerful enough to rewrite the nation's history. On Thursday, President Xi Jinping became the 3rd. His version of Chinese history is simple. The party is great, glorious, and always correct. And as long as people follow the party, China will rise to inevitable greatness. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? It stands on the cusp of greatness now, and one leader will soon make that greatness a reality. Xi, according to Xi. Such are the contents of a resolution on major achievements and historical experiences in the party's 100 years of struggle, passed in Beijing on Thursday by the Communist Party's Central Committee. I mean, this is, again, talking about cross-cultures and traveling the world, and I think this is kind of a central theme of this show. I think it's very important that in this show, we don't just, we talk about what's happening in America, but it's very important for me as a European. I mean, I've traveled widely through Europe. I've never been to China. The furthest east I've been is Bangkok, but that was for recreational fun, and that was pretty amazing. But I've not been to China. I've not been to Japan. I'd love to go to these places. Furthest south I've been, I think, is Mauritius, a small island off the kind of Horn of Africa. Furthest north I've been is northern Norway, Tromsø in the Arctic Circle. And the furthest west I've been is probably San Francisco, because that's a little bit more west than Los Angeles where I am now. It's just like leans out a little bit. And this is kind of what I'm saying about, travel and how important it is that we just have empathy for other cultures and other systems of government, politics, democracy. This is why it's so important for us to travel. Because otherwise we become indoctrinated into a system that we think is perfect. And that's why we're talking about China, because the Chinese, obviously some of them travel, but those that are, traditional and politically indoctrinated into Xi Jinping's way, this Chinese Communist Party, they genuinely believe, I thought a lot about this, and there's a lot of documentaries about this, when you talk to Chinese people and you say, what do you think about the politics here, they can't say enough good stuff about the president and the whole, political system. And it's this indoctrination, it's fascism, it's a doctrine, and to me, it's fascinating because they don't feel like they're missing out on anything. And they don't feel like they're not free. Even though to us in the West, we look at them and we're like, they are so not free. And yet, to them, it's like just normal. It's very interesting to me. So, yeah, I think, as we develop this show, talking about other cultures and how we can compare and contrast those cultures and the culture here in the US. I chose the US to relocate to because for me it's like, it's the best. Because there is a kind of feeling of freedom. And interestingly, when people ask me what I miss about England, I say nothing. But the thing I miss the most, because, apart from my friends and family, the thing I don't miss the most is the cameras everywhere. Everywhere you go. In London, where I'm from, cameras. CCTV is like how they solve crimes. It's not like here where, they have weapons. Everything is done with cameras. You could literally leave your house and the authorities would have video pictures of you from the moment you leave your house to the moment you get to your destination. There would be a camera that can pick you up. And this is how they solve crime. They don't chase criminals. They just go, look at the tapes. Now, those cameras were introduced over a period of years where I'm from. So we didn't kind of feel like this was Big Brother, like looking upon us, because they slowly introduced them. And there's like transport cameras. Well, the police and the authorities have access to the transport cameras. There's cameras at gas stations. Well, they have access to those as well. Then there's now this whole new phenomenon of people having home security. The Ring doorbell or the, various devices that enable people and the police. That's happening here a lot. The police are able to request this footage and use it as evidence. And then, of course, police have body-worn cameras. So there's cameras everywhere. It's very interesting to me that, there's so much of it. Okay, Amy, Will, Andrew, thank you for joining Backchannel. What a treat. Nice to know you're here. And if you want to join in, if you want to talk, if you want to share your views on this, how would you feel living in a place where you were literally being watched 24/7? And for me, that's the big difference. Not that I was doing anything wrong, but it's quite nice to know that you're not being tracked. If you use a credit card or a debit card or any kind of electronic, Apple Pay or Android Pay, whatever it is, those things are tracking you all the time as well. Every time you bleep in or out or buy yourself some goods in a store, it's like that puts you in a certain place at a certain time. And all these technologies are used by the police when solving crime. It's very interesting, isn't it? So that's why I feel like, for me, America feels more free, because there seems to be less... they're very good at solving crimes here, but they just do it in a slightly different way. But trust me, if you're walking through the streets of London, you look up, all you can see is cameras. It's literally everywhere. There'll be traffic lights, and then above the traffic lights, there'll be like 3 or 4 cameras pointing in each direction. We're just kind of used to it there now. So it's interesting. So let's go back to our story, because we're talking about China, and this is how this whole conversation came about, is talking about China. Tommy, thank you for joining the stream. Tommy's here, Andrew's here, Will's here, Amy's here, all in the chat. So if you want to chat, you just say to your device, whatever the wake-up word is, Echo or the female name, and then the word say, that's the magic word, and then your message. That's how you do it. And then you can be part of this conversation. So yeah, would you? Here's a question for you. Would you trade living in America for living somewhere else just to kind of get a sense of the flavors? And have you ever lived anywhere else? And would you consider? Because I know people that have moved to China. They've actually chosen China, and they're like, yeah, I want to go and experience that. And I'm very interested in like the prison system in China. Have you seen the videos of like people doing the dances? The inmates doing the dances in China? Have you seen those videos? Where they train like grown men, some of them quite serious felons. I mean, they put people in prison for no reason in China, so not all of them are serious criminals. But they're all learning the dance, and they're all in their orange jumpsuits, and they're dancing to like Michael Jackson songs. You must look it up. There's one particular one. I think they're doing Smooth Criminal, ironically. So Will says, yo, yo, yo. Hi, Will. Nice to know you're here. Thank you. Is yo, yo, yo a kind of greeting? Or are you playing with a yo-yo right now? You yo-yoing. That's a bit of a dad joke, isn't it? But I do have 2 kids. So I'm like totally, when people say that was a bit of a dad joke, I'm like, totally fair. Totally a dad. So yeah, that's China. We've been talking about, if you would give up your freedom here in the West for a kind of faux freedom in the East, and how it is that they can live there and not feel not free. Interesting. It's just what you grow up with. It's what you know. And that's why for me, like things like, gun ownership is like so scary to me, because I've grown up somewhere where it's just not a thing. So it's so important to travel, so important to learn different cultures. Let's cross country now and go to the New York Times and see how they lead on this Friday morning, November 12. It's 9:17, by the way, here on the West Coast, 12:17 on the East Coast. Europe nears boiling point over borders. Isn't it interesting? Territory, borders, immigration, it's like such a thing. Oh, Will's drowning in yo-yos. That's great. I'm so pleased. I can do one yo-yo over the overhand one, and it looks like I'm going to be really good at yo-yoing, like I've got the flick. But then I can't let it come back up and catch it. And just do the opening move. Bit strange, I know. Thousands of migrants unwilling weapons in a geopolitical struggle, in peril, in a freezing border zone, far-right nationalists marching on the streets of Warsaw, calling for harsh action against asylum seekers, belligerent national leaders facing off across a razor-wire border, a standoff over migrants along the European Union's eastern flank, one that EU leaders say has been manufactured by the authoritarian government of Belarus, is now growing more volatile, highlighting the raw emotions driving a crisis on that country's border with Poland. Yeah, Belarus is seeing some significant, conflict is the word I was looking for. And I was reading about it yesterday, and I was like, wow. And again, this is something that over here in on the West Coast, but let alone anywhere in America, we're so far from that. And so how much empathy can we have for places that are so far away? And are you the kind of person that has a social conscience? Do you take on the worries of the world? Or are you in your little bubble? It's very easy to slip into that bubble, isn't it? Will says, not technically a yo-yo, if you will. Oh, what, when I'm flicking the thing and doing the thing, that's not a yo? Oh, I see, it has to come back up again. Oh, it's sort of a single yo. Yeah, well, I just call it a yo. So that's the New York Times. Also on the front page is just off the back of Veterans Day, which was yesterday, of course, a photograph of 3 aircraft flying overhead and 2 female service people. The headline, a skyward salute at Arlington National Cemetery on Thursday, observing the first Veterans Day in 2 decades without US troops in an active war. Trump allies export election playbook to Brazil. Well, we're going to be looking at this story a little bit later. It's very interesting. And this is something I was saying at the time, when Trump was like in full swing whilst he was in office, I was thinking about the other world leaders. I mean, obviously China already does it to a certain extent. They just do it with a big smile on their face. But I was thinking about Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil and thinking about how he is being, in a way he's being taught what you can get away with, how much you can get away with leading your country. Will says, I've been rewatching, and much of it seems to be about whether you should take care of others. What have you been rewatching? I'm interested to know, what have you been rewatching? Is LOTR what you've been rewatching? Interested to know. Maybe you can clear that up for me. Oh, Lord of the Rings. Is that what LOTR is? Lord of the Rings. Why should we take care of the elves when they didn't take care of us? I mean, who knew you could get life lessons from a Peter Jackson movie, It's J.R.R. Tolkien. He wrote this stuff 100 years ago. Just, with giant feet. Why should Rohan help out Gondor? Why should the trees take care of the problems of man? Yeah, I mean, it's the same in Avatar or any of these kind of mystical stories. It's like good against evil, the small man taking on the big man. It's no different to like the working man taking on the corporates or the big pharmaceuticals or the big businesses. Thank you, Will. We got it. Lord of the Rings. Who knew? Aren't they doing a Lord of the Rings TV show? I think that's what they're working on at the moment, aren't they? Because, after those, they were very long. Those films were very long. I mean, I reckon I lost a good percentage of my life investing in those movies. I don't think I watched the last one. But I tell you what I did see. In London, Lord of the Rings had a musical on in the West End, in Theatreland, the Lord of the Rings show. And that was almost as long as all the movies put together. It had 2 intervals. And I sat there through that thing, and it was amazing. It was a very wealthy guy funded it. It never made money. It lost more money than any show in history, I think. But the production design was so good. It was Lord of the Rings live. I remember Golem climbing up this whole mountain. It was beautiful, like a revolving stage. And I was like, this is amazing. But I left in the interval. Because I have a rule with a show. It's like, if you're not enjoying it, don't stay. Don't force yourself to kind of sit through it. If you're not enjoying it, go eat. Eat and forever be happy. So let's just go back to the New York Times here. The headline, Trump allies export election playbook to Brazil. It says the conference hall was packed with a crowd of more than 1,000 cheering attacks on the press, the liberals, and the politically correct. There was Donald Trump Jr. warning that the Chinese could meddle in the election, a Tennessee congressman who voted against certifying the 2020 vote, and the president complaining about voter fraud. In many ways, the September gathering looked just like another CPAC, the Conservative Political Conference. But it was happening in Brazil. Most of it was in Portuguese, and the president at the lectern was Jair Bolsonaro, the country's right-wing leader. Yes, fresh from their assault on the results of the 2020 US presidential election, former President Trump and his allies are exporting their strategy to Latin America's largest democracy. It says working to support Mr. Bolsonaro's bid for re-election next year and helping sow doubt in the electoral process in the event that he loses. That's the tragedy of this whole thing, isn't it? It's like I can understand being a sore loser and not wanting to concede. I totally get that. But the moment you claim that the whole process is rigged, that undermines democracy for everybody, not just for yourself and your opponent. But think about it. It means that you stand no chance of legitimately winning ever again. Because you can't Liliana, thank you for joining the show. You can't undermine a political system and then expect to take part in that very same political system the year after or 4 years later and claim that you won. Because for years you've been saying the whole thing's rigged. Pick one. You either want to be in the game or you want to operate outside of it. I find this very interesting. So yes, it seems like Brazil, because I noticed that actually Bolsonaro, during Trump's presidency, Bolsonaro was actually saying the same stuff that Trump was saying. He's very anti-COVID, anti-lockdown, wouldn't wear a mask, got COVID himself. It was very, very similar. And the thing is, if you are the president of the United States, you are on a pedestal for the rest of the world. You know, other countries look to the US to decide how to behave, what to invest in. You know, we used to say in England that if America sneezes, then England catches a cold. Is that the phrase? Was that it? Yeah. If America sneezes, then Britain catches a cold. And this is to do with the fact that anything that happens in the US has this knock-on effect. Look at the subprime mortgage crash, you know, of 2007, 2008, and how this recession kind of domino effect across the rest of the world. And it all happened because of the over-leveraging in the US. So I think that that's something that, I don't know if Trump knew, because I don't know that he really knew anything, but I feel like what he has subconsciously done is set a precedent as a president for what you can get away with for other right-leaning nations to pick up on. And they're calling it a playbook here, and that's effectively what it is. Except it's a big playbook, which is more like a coloring book with a big, fat felt pen, Sharpie drawing of a squiggle with a thing on it, saying that the hurricane is actually going into Texas when it ain't. Liliana, thank you for joining us. Tommy, thank you for joining us. Andrew's here. Amy's here. I feel like we're in good company this morning. And if you'd like to join us, we're looking through the morning papers, whizzing around. And if there's a newspaper that we haven't done that you are interested in me reviewing, then just tell your Echo Show device, use your activation word followed by the word say, and then your message. And we'll get it up, and we'll go straight to it. Because this is part of the service. You know, I'm not here for my benefit. I'm here for your benefit. I decided to wear black today, by the way. Just thought I'd shake things up a little bit. Apparently it's slimming, but it's also like a bit of, you know, it's contrasting. This is like, I could do like shadow puppets here. It's like a perfect little, what do they call that little theatre space? Do you remember going to puppet shows where it was all black on black? There was a name for that. It was like a black spaced puppet show where the performers were in black and the lighting was very specific on the and then it was called Black Art, I think. I think it was called Black Art Theatre. Carla, the producer, is going to look it up and she's going to tell me if it was called Black Art Theatre. But I think that's what it was called. I mean, that's like analog stuff, isn't it? You know? Real kind of analog puppet show. And if you're listening right now and you're of the, you know, if you're a millennial and you're listening to that and you'll be like, what is that man talking about? Just called Black Theatre. Is that what it's called? Are you sure it's not called Black Art Theatre? Black Theatre. That's amazing. Black Light Theatre. Okay. Thank you, Carla. Carla's in London, by the way, and she's producing the show. I'm in Los Angeles. Will's in California. Liliana's in Nevada. So if you're listening, I'd love to know where you're at. So just jump on, introduce yourself to your Echo Show device, and I'll know where you are because it'll ask you. Strategy to hold industry liable for opioid crisis starts to falter. This is a story on the front of the New York Times. We're going to be discussing this a little bit later as well. In 2014, it says, as overdoses and deaths from prescription opioids were catapulting, gutting the budgets of local governments that were struggling to contain the damage, lawyers began working up a novel legal strategy to hold the pharmaceutical industry responsible. Well, that approach, which in the ensuing years became the foundation for more than 3,000 lawsuits, was soundly rejected this month by a California trial judge, and on Tuesday, the Oklahoma Supreme Court, 2 states where the first opioid trials have concluded. I mean, there was a payout recently for the opioid crisis, though, wasn't there? Didn't one of the pharmaceutical companies accept liability? I think they did. And, to underestimate how the opioid crisis has contributed to homelessness would be foolish. Because you talk to anybody who's living on the street, I guarantee that in their list of reasons why they are where they are is opioid addiction, off the back of an opioid prescription. Someone has to take responsibility for that prescription, whether it be the prescriber or whether it be the manufacturer. Because not all countries have an opioid crisis. This is what I was saying about traveling around and trying to work it out. Homelessness in other places could be more to do with war, people coming back from the front line who are so compromised and so damaged that they can't live in society and they need to live on the fringes or on the streets. Different countries have different causes of homelessness, but here the opioid crisis is a huge contributor to it. New York base likes her ideas, if not her vote. This is a story about the number 6 subway train creaking towards an elevated Bronx station on Tuesday. One of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Hi, Boney. Thank you for joining the stream. Thank you for being part of the chat. Thank you for communicating with us here on Backchannel. I'm Anthony. Nice to meet you, Boney. One of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's constituents stood across the street struggling to understand his congresswoman's opposition to the most sweeping public works legislation in generations. That's right, the infrastructure bill, which passed the House last week, offers New York billions of dollars. And it was a top priority for President Biden, congressional Democrats, and even 13 Republicans, 4 of them from New York. However, OAC and 5 fellow progressives. And why do they call them progressives? She's not progressive. With my perspective, AOC is not progressive. She's just normal. It's just Biden is so right-wing to me. He walks and talks a kind of moderate line, but to me, Biden is right-wing. AOC to me is normal. I love the fact that the Green New Deal, which she's been championing, investing in green energy and technology and jobs and infrastructure. No one can say that. Biden will not utter those 3 words, Green New Deal. He won't say it because it's been so branded. Hi, Riyadh. Thanks for joining us and joining the chat here, and thanks for joining Backchannel. Biden won't say Green New Deal out loud because it just seems too progressive for people to kind of get their heads around. And yet, we were talking about Amsterdam yesterday. Anywhere else, it's just kind of normal. It's just normal. I actually want to talk about that later because, we were talking a little bit about the hypocrisy of Biden yesterday, trying to get Walmart and Target and these big retailers to fill the shelves with all this imported Chinese plastic molded garbage as Christmas presents. And yet he just got back from Glasgow making a speech about sustainability. It's do me a favor. Pick one. What's it going to be? The problem is, if he doesn't do that, the right are going to say, he's cancelled Christmas. Riyadh's actually talking to Will now on the chat. I have people listening to this show, watching the show, are now talking to each other and leaving me out of the conversation. Oh, thank you, Riyadh. He's like, hey, Anthony. He's like, hey, Will. I'm now waiting for Will to be like, high five, Riyadh. Oh, so cute. So we're going to talk a little bit later about this because, there's a story out today, which we'll talk about later, where very critical of Biden and how he's gone to Glasgow and he's done this whole speech and this whole spiel, and yet he is refusing to rule out coal power as the future of the United States energy production. Just rule it out. France yesterday said they were going to build new nuclear power stations. They're not doing coal, they're doing nuclear. Well, nuclear does not have emissions for the atmosphere, but it does have waste. Oh, Riyadh wants safe nuclear. Well, if you can come up with a way of doing safe nuclear, I am all ears. Because, you have to bury the waste invariably. So how do you break down nuclear waste? Who knew that was going to be a topic today? Welcome to Backchannel. How do you break down nuclear waste? Let me know. all the lightest and fun topics What were they talking about on Backchannel this morning? Oh yeah, he was asking, how do you break down nuclear waste? How do you break down nuclear waste? I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it. I understand the concept of nuclear fusion. I understand that there's no carbon emissions. I just don't know there is a byproduct, isn't there? Oh, apparently you can store the waste to power the whole Earth on one football pitch. Well, this is news to me. I would love to know more about that. I really would. Thank you. Riyad's like my nuclear waste guy. I was thinking about, do you remember the storyline in Back to the Future in 1985 where Doc Brown steals the nuclear, the nuclear reactor for the flux capacitor? He steals it from the Libyans. I was thinking about how racist that sounds now. You know, when they kind of come shooting for him in the Twin Pines parking mall. And he's like, Marty's like, who's that? And he's like, the Libyans, they found me. And I was thinking, I love the fact that they thought at the time in 1985 that it was okay to kind of brand the Libyans as being the ones who supplied the nuclear. You couldn't really get away with that now, could you? Riyadh, who is Libyan, he says, I was just happy we were represented in film. Now that's the kind of cup half full attitude that I like. You see? My perspective is they should have left the Libyans alone. Riyadh, the Libyans, we're in a movie. It's genius. You see, this is why we have to have conversations, dialogue, because everybody has their own view and their own opinion. Thank you, Riyadh. Good on you. And if you've got any spare of that nuclear stuff, then I need it for my flux capacitor, because my DeLorean's parked outside. It's actually hidden behind a big sign. I covered it in trees. I didn't want anyone to find it, because I'm going back to the future. Schools face teacher crunch on the front of the New York Times this morning, putting a premium on substitutes. It says, when Amber McCoy called in sick this fall, there was not a substitute teacher who could step into her 4th grade class in Huntington, West Virginia. Instead, her students at Kellogg Elementary School were taught by a rotating cast of 7 staff members, including the assistant principal, who switched off every 45 minutes. It says they were basically relying on every other warm body in our school. Yeah, I mean, that is an issue. My daughter told me the other day that she had a substitute teacher. And I said, was the substitute teacher any good? And she was like, yeah. I don't know if that's a good reference or not. Finally, on the front of the New York Times, as Biden pledges dip in inflation, question is when. Rocketing inflation has become a headache for US consumers, and President Biden has a go-to prescription. He says a key way to help relieve increasing prices is to pass the $1.85 trillion collection of spending programs and tax cuts that is currently languishing in the Senate. I just don't see how they're going to get it through. I mean, I said that about the infrastructure, the $1 trillion infrastructure. I said it was there's no way they're going to get that through. And it turns out they did. And, Nancy Pelosi, despite being, is she 82 or 83? She's kind of amazing. And she comes up for so much flack. I mean, people despise her. But she really is. I mean, when I'm 83, I'm not going to be able to have any of these skills. I know I'll literally be languishing in a comfortable chair with a built-in toilet. She's 81, apparently. Max says, now I just need to be able to watch on my phone as well as type. Oh, Max, so you're watching Backchannel on your phone. Maybe you need another device, Max. Maybe you need to... Because I'm sitting in front of 8 devices here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens in front of me. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras in front of me. And I'm still where do I look? Where do I start? Finally, on the front of the New York Times, the headline is, as Biden pledges dip in inflation, question is, when? Rocketing inflation has become a headache for US consumers. President Biden has a go-to prescription. I just read this out. I was just in the twilight zone for a minute just now. I was like, hang on, that sounds familiar. I already did that. So let's jump straight onto another newspaper, because we need to speed up our newspaper review a little bit. I'm very good at taking my time over these things. By the way, if there's a newspaper that you would like me to read from, if you are living in a certain part of town, I mean, most of the people that are listening and taking part in Backchannel right now are in California. And I already did the LA Times. You're late. That was the top of the show today. LA Times. We're going to go to the East Coast now and do the Wall Street Journal. They lead with homes now sell in 1 week, forcing buyers to take risks. Well, we're going to discuss this in more detail in just a few minutes. But the headline is, home buyers are having to pounce faster than ever to clinch a deal, forcing many of them to make snap decisions about what house to purchase and how much to pay. And that's a shame, because I really feel like the biggest purchase we ever make in our lives is probably a home, right? And let's say hypothetically it's like $500,000. The fact that you get like 15 minutes to make that decision, like go in and have a look round. Maybe you do it the first time, 5 minutes. Maybe you go back a second time, another 5 minutes. Maybe you go back a third time, another 5 minutes. But in reality, you're making a decision about this huge spend, and you've just got a few seconds just to check it out and go, yep, I'll take it. It's now becoming more and more competitive. So we're going to talk about this in more detail in just a little while. Biggest crypto exchanges everywhere and nowhere. It says Binance has no headquarters, little regulation, but that may soon change. And we're going to talk about this in about an hour's time and talk a little bit about cryptocurrency a little bit later. And maybe it's something that you have invested in. Maybe you're mining Bitcoin as we speak. I've only recently learned what that even means, and I'm still not sure. So, finally, this is kind of a good one. Poor countries seek help to quit coal. It says there's in South Africa, the gleaming new chimneys and hulking generators that will soon be the second largest coal-fired power plant in the Southern Hemisphere are at the center of South Africa's $20 billion 50-year bet to fuel economic growth and lift its population out of poverty. Now, South Africa and its Kusile power station have also become a test for whether rich nations can help poorer ones transition away from the dirtiest fossil fuel. So, there it is. It's very interesting, isn't it, how the poorest nations are still like building coal-fired power stations and thinking like, yeah, we're finally onto this. It's like, this is why the rich nations have to give these financial incentives to poorer nations to help them with their climate emissions, their carbon emissions. There's no other way of doing it. Okay, that was the Wall Street Journal. Oh, we've still got the Washington Post. All right, I'll do the Washington Post very quickly because I want to kind of dive a bit deeper into some of these stories. And if you're joining us here on Backchannel, Will, Riyadh, Max, thank you for being part of the program. You're very welcome to just chip in at any time. Just use your activation word, then the word say, and then your message, and you can be part of this. And if there's a newspaper from where you're from, maybe your hometown, that you'd like us to read out, then you can also let me know, and we can do a little review from it. Booster divide persists at the top on the front of the Washington Post this morning. Anxious about a surge of coronavirus infections enveloping Europe as cases tick up in the United States, senior health officials in the Biden administration are pressing urgently to offer vaccine booster shots to all adults. But support for the renewed push is not unanimous, it says. The director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, has expressed caution about making extra shots so broadly available now, according to several officials familiar with the situation who spoke on the condition of anonymity. I've actually had my booster shot. I had it 3 or 4 days ago now. And so I'm full of vaccine. You know, that's like my 3rd COVID shot now. And yet the kind of quarantine lifestyle that I lead means that I probably could have left that. I mean, the thing is, do you remember at the beginning there was like a shortage of vaccines in America? And so they had to be very strict about who, but now there's no shortage of vaccines. There's an abundance of vaccine. So I didn't really feel guilty about taking a booster that somebody else could have got. I don't really know why I got it. I mean, I think because it's not really my turn yet, but I heard they were doing it, and then I was like, oh, I need to get a booster. I hadn't put 2 and 2 together. And I just went down there, got an appointment straight away and got boosted. And then afterwards, should I have got boosted? And now Rachel Walensky is going, I'm not sure you should get boosted. I'm like, thanks very much, Rachel. Make your mind up. Pete, P-E-A-T, they're saying, a superhero in Fight for the Planet. This is in England. I've been there. Moor, bog, fen, mire, flush, swamp, slough. Peatlands have gotten a bum rap. They're inhospitable, useless, too wet to plough, too dry to fish, the old farmers say. Scorned as an anaerobic wasteland, dissed in the popular imagination, imagined as the eerie dead marshes in Lord of the Rings. It's weird that we're now talking about Lord of the Rings, when earlier we were talking about Lord of the Rings. Or as the forbidden Grimpen Mire in The Hound of the Baskervilles. When bad things go down in Charles Dickens, the scene is set in a forbidding moor. Well, all slander, says Christian Dunn, wetlands scientist at Bangor University in Wales. Peat is the superhero of the natural world, he says, because these waterlogged, acidic, low-nutrient ecosystems are the most carbon-dense lands on Earth. And he says if you want to safely store carbon for 1,000 years, nothing beats peat. It is nature's vault. Is this kind of connected to what Riyadh was saying earlier about storing the nuclear waste in one football pitch? Are you saying that you do it like in a wetland or in a bog or in peat, as is being described here on the front of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal? Is that what you were saying? I mean, a lot of our conversations are joining up this morning, aren't they? Talking about Lord of the Rings earlier, and now they're suggesting that that's like the landscape for this story. Talking about the Libyans bringing in the nuclear. I don't even know what I don't know what the second word of that sentence is. What was it that the Libyans brought in that tube that Doc Brown put into the back of the DeLorean? What was it? A nuclear charge, a nuclear fusion. What was it? He said, I need a nuclear. Riyadh says you have to encase nuclear waste in cement. Well, cement's not very environmentally friendly. It uses a whole lot of water. How are we going to... Maybe they just put it under every roadway. But the problem is you risk the radiation leaking, don't you? So you're effectively creating a whole... Oh, it was plutonium! Carla, thank you. That's what they were looking for. Oh, he's saying it's not going to break down. So if you put nuclear waste in and encase it in cement, it's not going to break down, but it's better than coal. Yeah, but you're going to get radiation leaking out of that. You're going to turn every roadway or every concrete parking lot that you've buried your nuclear waste in, it's going to turn into like a mini Chernobyl. It's going to be a space where you can't inhabit it, because if you get your nuclear reading device, the somethingometer, I forget what those things are called, they go tick, 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 tick. You're going to be like, let's not park the car here for the concert. I don't know. I just feel like we've been on this planet for long enough. We've exploited and explored so many options now, haven't we? Interesting. Plutonium. Who knew? 1.21 gigawatts. I hit my head on the toilet seat. So, yes, from the boreal north to the tropical south, from Scotland's grouse moors to the vast tracts recently discovered in the Congo Basin, the Earth's peatlands store twice as much carbon as all the planet's forests combined, though they cover only a tenth of the landmass. Riyadh says, I'm fairly sure every nuclear leak we have has been human error rather than the materials. Now, that's a very good point. That big nuclear leak at the Japanese power station was caused by an earthquake. Do you remember? There was a bit of an earthquake and that caused the reactor to crack. And that was really the biggest nuclear leak we've had in recent years. What was it called, that place? What was that? Do you remember what that town was called where that nuclear power station was? The Japanese city of... Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's on the tip of my tongue. Fukushima! Riyadh, you're my man this morning. Thank you. The Fukushima power plant. There you go. I knew it was something like that. Actually, I didn't. I mean, I remember now, obviously, but it's not a word that jumps into your head. But that is an example of whose idea was it to build a nuclear power station on an earthquake fault line by a river? If you want to go on the internet, you can now go to backchannel.tv, and web chat is available there. So if you have an Echo device and it's not an Echo Show with a screen on it, if it's just an Echo speaker, just a regular Amazon speaker, and you're listening to Backchannel on that, and you want to interact with the show, you go online to backchannel.tv. I might do it myself right now and just see what it's like, because I feel like this is like, I want to be part of this. I might start like texting the show myself. Oh, here it is. So it's a chat facility. Okay, I'm entering the chat. I'm just clicking the word enter the chat. Here's all the branding. I have to just put in my name and where I'm from. Okay, so I'm going to put in Anthony. That's my name. It says it right there. Anthony. And then I'm selecting my state. I'm in California. Now I'm pressing join. This is it. I'm in. Look, the whole chat for this show is now there, and it says that I've joined. You see, the technology is genius. Riyadh, I can't thank you enough for this. This is fantastic. Okay, let me log out of this, because otherwise I'll get too excited that I've got more people listening than I thought. Be like, oh, there's a guy called Anthony in California, and such is my, I have like the memory of a goldfish. I couldn't even remember Fukushima. What's wrong with me? We've got one final newspaper here in our newspaper review, and it's the Arizona Daily Star. And if you're in Arizona right now, pretty much everybody here is in California. But I got to do a shout out from Riyadh to Will to Alex and to Kevin. Hey guys, this is Backchannel. I'm Anthony. It's 9:52. Max is here as well. Max, if you're listening, watching, you're part of this. The whole Backchannel team who've brought together this technology that enables me to sit here and talk to you and in real time communicate your messages that you say to your device. You don't even have to type anything. You literally, this is like a hands-free experience. And let's be honest, we're so busy these days, we need hands-free experiences. Okay, the Arizona Daily Star on this Friday morning leads with COVID-19 hotspots off a sign of what could be ahead for United States. It says the contagious Delta variant is driving up COVID-19 hospitalizations in the Mountain West and fueling disruptive outbreaks in the north, a worrisome sign of what could be ahead this winter in the United States. And while trends are improving in Florida, Texas, and other southern states that bore the worst of the summer surge, it's clear that Delta isn't done with the US. COVID-19 is moving north and west for the winter as people head indoors, close their windows, and breathe stagnant air. And Dr. Donald Milton of the University of Maryland School of Public Health says we're going to see a lot of outbreaks in unvaccinated people that will result in serious illness, and it will be tragic. Yeah. I mean, they've kind of worked out now that the vaccination is going to prevent you from dying. Right? That's like a fact. There's enough data. 5 billion people have been vaccinated around the world. So it's probably more now. Every day it's millions more. And I was listening to an interview this morning, and they're talking about this actress who's supposed to be in like what's the new Marvel movie? There's a new Marvel movie, and she's refusing to get vaccinated. And she's the star of the new Marvel movie. I think it's called Wakanda Reunited or something. It's like a Black Panther follow-up. And she doesn't want to get vaccinated. She's the star of the show and she can't be in the film. So Marvel and Disney or whoever it is that's doing it are literally going to have to either recast, rewrite the whole movie because she was in the last film. And she's like flat out decide. And I thought, I don't know what her fee is. Let's say hypothetically she was going to get paid $20 million for this movie. It's probably more, but let's just say hypothetically. She's actually a black female, so it's probably going to be less. Because there still isn't parity with white males in Hollywood. She's a black female, she's probably going to get $500,000. Such is the insanity of this modern world. But let's say hypothetically she's getting 25 million. We're going to bump it up for the purposes of this demonstration. What Do you think she might be doing it to drive the price up? I mean, that's actually quite a good idea, isn't it? If you were her, you'd be like, no, I'm not getting vaccinated. They're like, 30 million? No, I'm not getting vaccinated. 35 million? No, not $50 million. Yeah, okay, I'll get vaccinated, but I'm taking Johnson & Johnson. I mean, it would be very interesting if that's her logic. It's quite clever, isn't it? I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure she has her own views and she's made her own decision. And I've spoken to a lot of people who do not want to get vaccinated. But they're still going on like old thoughts and not even data. They've never gone on data because, you know, the biggest argument is it's not tested. I don't know what it's going to do to me. And it's like, it's going to stop you dying, stop you getting hospitalized, and it's probably going to save the lives of other people as well. I mean, I went to a restaurant last night and they asked for vaccination proof on the door. And this is happening right across California now. You can only eat in this restaurant, which was outdoors, if you show proof of vaccination. It's just the way it is because we're living in a pandemic. There's no such thing as normal. I hate it when people say, oh, when are we going to go back to normal? Well, to me, the world was not very normal in the first place. But secondly, I don't want to go back to normal. Like, I want this is a lived experience. Like, I think this is teaching us stuff about collective responsibility and about caring for our fellow man and for us all hopefully being treated the same. It's 9:56 here on the West Coast, 12:56 Eastern. We're going to, in a couple of minutes, we're going to listen to US News Update. It's a podcast that I do on the Folly Network, a daily podcast, just 2 minutes long, but it gives you a chance to hear about the news that's happening across the United States. So we'll do that at 10 this morning. Hi, Sean. Sean's back. Thanks for joining us. We're celebrating Backchannel this morning after the launch of the Backchannel TV website where you can do web chat. So if you don't have an interactive device that you're listening to this show on, then you can do the web chat. Just go to the website, backchannel.tv. That's how you do it. I adjusted the color again today, gone down to 65%. It was 70 yesterday, and I was like glowing. My lips were like glowing. And I'm trying to match the color scheme of my studio with the Backchannel kind of branding. Here and here, I'm trying to get yellows and blues and a little black. I'm thinking about all of this. This is not just random. Didn't like randomly that happened. There's a lot of thought that goes into this. So I'm pointing it out because I don't want it to go unnoticed. And soon they're going to make all the other hosts buy a whole load of sponge and stick it to the walls of their home. Final story this morning as we wrap up our paper review at 10 o'clock on the front of the Arizona Daily Star. Alex is like, woo, what are you celebrating? The sponge? Celebrate the sponge. How do you bury your nuclear waste? These are the questions, folks, on the Anthony Davis Show. The headline is UN Chief, Global Warming Goal on Life Support. Yes, this is the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Yesterday, he warned that a key temperature goal in climate talks is on life support. But he still hopes that world governments will step up their pledges to slash emissions of greenhouse gases. And he said that the negotiations set to end today in Glasgow will very probably not yield the carbon emissions cutting pledges that he said are needed to keep the planet from warming beyond the 1.5 degree threshold. He's basically admitting defeat. You know? It's a little bit like when they pulled the troops out of Afghanistan and they basically went, yep, we lost. The Taliban won. And I feel it's a bit like that here, you know? He's like, hands up, we're not going to meet the targets. So how, in these situations, do you qualify this and keep going? You know, how do you, in the case of Afghanistan, keep America safe? Support the reconstruction of a town or a city that's been decimated? And in the case of carbon emissions and meeting these targets, what can we all do as individuals to help Antonio Guterres meet that 1.5 degrees target. And, we can't just wait for the big corporates to do it, the big industries to reduce their carbon emissions. They're making pledges and slowly they're doing it. I actually think there's more of us than there is of them. And I know that industry is a big polluter, but we are, as individuals, we are all big polluters. And it's really important that we make the effort to make small changes. And I've said every day, I've told you what my pledges are. I drive an electric car, don't eat meat, I recycle, I don't eat dairy, I don't make unnecessary journeys, I try not to fly. Oh yeah, and I don't use the air conditioning. I get very hot. I mean, I have the AC on in here, but it's not air conditioning, it's just an extractor. It's just taking the hot air out of this room. There's no emissions. The extraction, well, maybe there is, but I'm actually extracting it into this building. So there it is. That's how we'll wrap up our newspaper reviews this morning with Antonio Guterres' tragic news that we're not going to hit our targets. I just hope that news is going to make people wake up and be like, right, this is serious now. We're really going down the wrong road. I think that's his intention. I hope he's not just being like, okay, I'm done. See ya. So far, talks have not come close to achieving any of the UN's 3 announced priorities for the annual conference called COP26. Okay, those are the papers. We're going to dive into some of these stories in a little more depth. And you can join in just by talking to your Echo Show device. You say the activation word followed by say, and then your message. And then be part of the chat. Or you can go online to backchannel.tv and log in with your name and where you're from. No other details. You don't have to give your email address or anything, just your name, where you're from. And you can message me directly from your phone or from your iPad or your laptop, wherever you are and whoever you are, you're welcome to Backchannel. It's 2 minutes after 10. Let's have a listen to US News Update and find out what's happening across the United States. This is a little podcast that I do that you're welcome to download at any time. And just to kind of have me in your ears once a day for 2 minutes. So let's see if it works today. Here it is. It's Friday, November 12. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. The $1 trillion infrastructure bill passed in Congress on Friday is the largest U.S. investment in roads, rail lines, and other transportation networks in decades. It also gives some members of Joe Biden's administration unprecedented control over how it is spent. Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg will control $126 billion in new spending over the next 5 years, more than 1/5 of the new spending authorized by the law. That's a dramatic shift from the current transportation budget, which mostly doles out most transportation aid to state governments, which decide how and where it is put to use. Buttigieg, a former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, will oversee roughly $25 billion each year through competitive grant programs that allow his agency to pick and choose which projects get funding. Buttigieg said the Transportation Department would favor projects that reduce greenhouse gases, increase safety, boost job creation, or advance racial equity. President Joe Biden called military veterans the very spine of America as he marked Veterans Day yesterday, vowing to make sure they get the benefits they have earned. After nodding his head in prayer at the tomb of the unknown soldier, Biden delivered remarks in the cemetery's Memorial Amphitheater. Biden said that thousands of U.S. veterans of the Afghanistan and Iraq conflicts brought home unseen psychological wounds of war, and that he would make sure they get the help that they need. Your daily US News Update is part of the Volley Network. Interact with my live daily morning show. Ask your Amazon Echo Show device to open Backchannel. And we're back. It worked today. This is the first time we've made it work flawlessly. I'm so pleased. So nice to get a break. I didn't actually do anything. I just sat here listening to it. I should have gone and flambéed a crepe Suzette or something. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. It's 5 after 10 Pacific, 5 after 1 Eastern. And Backchannel is where you get the chance to talk back to your device, your Echo Show, and join in with the show. Very, very easy to do. You can either do it with your Echo Show device. You just say the word say and then your message. Activation word first, obviously. Or you can go to backchannel.tv and you can join the chat there as well. Very easy to do. We've been looking through the morning papers this morning, zigzagging around the United States. And I want to go back to one of those stories that we were looking at earlier. American home buyers are having to pounce faster than ever to clinch a deal, forcing many of us to make snap decisions about what house to purchase and how much to pay. And so I'm very interested in this because, I was saying earlier that to spend $500,000 on a home, for example, is the biggest purchase you're ever going to make. It's the most money. I mean, admittedly, a lot of that money is mortgage money, but that's not the point. You are committing to a debt, and this is like the biggest expense you'll ever have. And yet, we only get like 10 minutes to look around the house and decide if it's the house for us. And so they're asking now that they're saying the window of time when American homebuyers can jump on these potential properties is more narrow than ever, giving the record pace of home sales, according to a new report released today by the National Association of Realtors. So I'm very interested to know if this has happened to you. If you're trying to sell your home, or if you've recently moved, or you're thinking of moving, if you've been to view properties, have you felt this pressure that you've got to move faster than ever to get the home that you want? Or it depends, I guess, what state you're in and where you're at. But I mean, certainly here in California, it's just impossible. You want to find a home, you literally have to goes to sealed bids. You really have to have a relationship with somebody. Is it just a California thing? I don't think it is. I mean, this particular story is I think it's seeing it right across the U.S. now. It says a survey of recent U.S. home buyers shows properties stayed on the market for a median period of just 1 week before going under contract between June 2020 and 2021, up from 3 weeks in the previous year. This is the lowest recorded median time on the market since NAR started collecting data in 1989. And it's another sign of a historically tight real estate market. Most sellers are now collecting 100% or more of the asking price for their homes, a shift from previous years when Americans tended to get slightly less than what was originally listed. So it's very interesting, isn't it? Because when I bought my home in London, I ended up paying more for it than it was advertised for because it went to bids. It was sealed bids, and you just had to randomly pick a number. Riyadh said it's definitely crazy. He just bought and sold a house in California, and we were in contract for 1 week. I mean, this is exactly what I'm saying. Is it like a shortage of housing stock? Is that the reason that people are jumping on this? They say there's a lot of demand right now. People who didn't expect to move in the last year, the pandemic has really driven them to make that choice. And at the same time, the US housing supply shrunk as construction companies battled supply chain disruptions and labor shortages. Riyadh says inflation has part to do with it as well. Freddie Mac estimated the US has a housing supply deficit of 3.8 million units, meaning an additional 3.8 million homes will be needed to build to catch up with demand. That's remarkable, isn't it? He says parking cash in an asset. I mean, I feel I don't own a home at the moment, and I just feel like I don't think I want to. I just don't know that for me now is now the time to buy somewhere. I just don't think so. And the reason that I'm giving, and here's a reason that you would never have given in previous years in the West, and that is climate change. I'm not buying a home because of climate change. I just feel like California's just getting hotter and hotter. They reckon in 6 to 8 years, parts of it will be uninhabitable. You just have to be indoors with the air conditioning on all the time. Plus, we're in an earthquake zone, and then we're also in a hyperinflated, certainly here in Los Angeles, we're in a hyperinflated market. So a home that would probably cost $250,000 to rebuild is being sold for $2.5 million. So the cost of actually building that home is not the cost that home is currently valued at. And it's only valued at something that people are prepared to pay. That's how you get a valuation, is it's like, what are people prepared to pay for this? And people have got money. I mean, that's the thing I don't understand. It's like people have got money. They drive up the price of housing. It says a worsening supply shortage coupled with historic demand caused home prices to soar during the pandemic, a trend that has not yet slowed. The average US home sold for between $453,000 in June and September, according to US Census Bureau figures, up from $397,000 during the same period last year. I mean, that's a huge jump, isn't it? Holding on to a home is also becoming harder for low-income Americans. The number of low-priced homes on the market rose by 13% last quarter, according to a recent report from Redfin, suggesting that homeowners can no longer afford to pay their mortgages. Because there has been some mortgage holidays, hasn't there? You know, there was some kind of COVID protections put in place where people could take a break from paying. And also there was the kind of eviction protection as well, so that renters couldn't be evicted from their homes. But it's become more competitive. So I'm asking you today, if you yourself have recently moved, if this has happened to you, if you've had to make a snap decision on a property because you just knew someone else was going to get it. And you were like, I can't do this quickly. I can't get my head around it this quickly. I can't arrange a mortgage this quickly. I can't commit to a 25 or 30 year debt because it's too soon. Hi, Sean. Thank you for joining the chat this morning here on Backchannel. I'm Anthony. Nice to know you're back. It's 12 minutes after 10, precisely here on the West Coast. And if you've recently moved or you're thinking of moving, how did it go? Because the cost of moving is crazy. Riyadh went up against someone that was going to buy their house. Oh, really? That's interesting. It's such a... Yeah, I just don't know if I've got the head for moving anymore. I'm going to recline a little bit now, just because, a bit like your pal How, just going to get a little bit more comfortable, reposition slightly, because I've been sitting in the upright position for so long. I kind of feel like I deserve a little bit of a rejig. There we go. That's it. I'm done. I'm coming back now. It's interesting. I feel like it's a bit like going on a flight for 2 hours where you just have to kind of sit very still and you can't nudge the people either side because, of course, invariably I'm in the middle seat. You can't nudge anyone, so you kind of always have to lock your body down into some kind of very... It's like a shutdown, like a full human shutdown. The only thing that really works are your eyes, so you can watch Stanley Kubrick's 2001 exactly as the director intended on a 6-inch screen. Like this, with your little headphones on. Have you ever got up out of an aeroplane seat and forgot your headphones were plugged into the chair in front? That is not fun. You end up with your earlobes on the floor. I actually bought, for about $20, a little black box with a plug on it. You plug it into the headphone socket on the screen or in the side of the chair, wherever it is. And it's a Bluetooth box. And it means you can wear your AirPods or your wireless headphones and you create a little Bluetooth network from the screen. I bought it. I've never used it because I haven't flown in 3 years. But it's sitting in my drawer. It's a little Bluetooth transmitter specifically for air travel. So you create your own little Bluetooth network from genius. So you can finally wear your wireless headphones. Okay, there it is. That's one of our stories, one of our conversations that we're having this morning. So I'm very keen to hear from you. You can use backchannel.tv to send a message or just talk to your Echo Show device by saying the activation word followed by say and then your message. So many people joining us this morning. Will, Riyadh, Max, Sean, Will, Riyadh, Max, Sean, and Anthony. Nice to know you're listening. And then something else that I'm interested in talking about, because I think we'll kind of run a couple of conversations alongside each other here, is we touched on this earlier. We were talking about cryptocurrency, and we mentioned it when we were looking in the morning newspaper review. And I was asking if you had any cryptocurrency, if you understand what it even is. The jury's still out for me. Or are you still like scratching your head over the whole concept and you're just like, I don't think I can engage with that. And this is going to happen more and more, like virtual stuff where we're not sure if it's real or not, especially once the metaverse kicks in. We're going to be like, what are we buying here? Is this like a real good or is it a virtual good? Am I buying like credits and tokens so that I can purchase stuff in a virtual world? And maybe the thing about Bitcoin is that it's attracted so many people because some people got very rich off it when it first started. The people that were, I don't know how they got, I just don't understand. And my friend's been talking about mining Bitcoin and like buying a PC to actually mine this stuff at home. And I think it like generates algorithms to kind of grow Bitcoin. I mean, I'm a thoughtful person. I'm not an intellectual, but I have a reasonable grasp of the world. I cannot get my head around the concept of mining Bitcoin on a PC that's like chundering away in the corner of your living room. I cannot get my head around that because we are entering a kind of virtual dimension where reality and virtual fuse, where you're bringing the virtual into your home. And I understand that, like, where is the internet? Where is it? What is the internet? Well, it's a series of servers, isn't it? Some sit in giant data centers in Arizona. Others are people's home servers that are also connected to the internet. Where does this data live? When you do a Google search, where is it? Backchannel.tv, like, where is that? Where does that sit? Does that sit in an office in San Francisco, or does it sit in a data center on another continent? What is the internet? It's a very big question. You have to ask Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the Englishman that claims to have invented it. He's still going strong. I have mixed feelings about Tim Berners-Lee, because I'm like, the internet is obviously a very great thing. It's enabling us to have these conversations right now, but it's also the cause of a lot of death and destruction. Extremist groups and arranging insurrections, for example. These things are all done online. So you have to kind of constantly weigh the balance between the good and the bad. Does the good outweigh the bad? Hi, Sean. Thanks for saying hello. Hello. So do you have a cryptocurrency? It's the world's fastest growing major financial exchange, has no head office, has no formal address, it lacks licenses in countries where it operates, it has a chief executive who until recently wouldn't answer any questions about his location. It started just 4 years ago. They're calling this whole sector Binance. It's like a joke word, isn't it? Binance, the exchange giant that towers over the digital currency world, a crypto equivalent of the London Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, bigger than all of those combined. And after this burst of growth, Binance processes more trade for cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ether each day, $76 billion worth, than its 4 largest competitors put together, according to data provided by CryptoCompare. I don't get it. If you've ever bought a Bitcoin or mined a Bitcoin or eaten a Bitcoin, I'd be very interested to know. I don't get it. And years ago, I was probably too immature to admit that I don't get something. Not anymore. I don't get it. It says, ever since the boom of Bitcoin and related cryptos, these digital assets have seemed to become the first choice for every investor. Hi, Danny, by the way. Thank you for joining the chat. A crypto... hello, world. Is that what Danny's saying? You are. I mean, you're literally talking to the whole world right here. It says a cryptocurrency exchange plays a crucial role in evaluating the whole crypto ecosystem, and one name that comes on top of that list is Binance. The incentive decisions taken by the crypto exchange have made it the world's fastest growing major financial exchange. I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, look, what is currency? If you go back to the very earliest days of money, And a friend of mine, Justin, wrote a very good book on this. He talked about like grain farmers, the original currencies. Farmers were the ones that controlled finance in a town or a village. Before banks were invented, they would exchange grain and hay bales, and agriculture was basically the earliest bartering that existed. I mean, I'm sure if you went back to like Mesopotamia and kind of Egyptology, you'd find like people were bartering gourds and vases and things. But the modern financial system was built by farmers, the exchange of goods. And then there came a time where I think the farmers realized that they could actually lend money based upon assets. So they would store other people's agricultural products, hay bales, for example, and then that would be used as a chit. And this is how it started. This is how like the modern financial system started. And after a while, they realized that they could actually lend money based on stock that they didn't have. And that's where debt became a thing. It's very interesting. My friend, I'm trying to remember the name of the book that this guy wrote, that it goes back to the very, very earliest days of the kind of economic system. I can't remember. It'll come to me, and then I can tell you, and then you can read it. Or you can, download it, or whatever they do these days. I don't know what they do. I haven't downloaded anything my whole life. If only that was true. So, yeah, I'm very interested to know if you've invested in cryptocurrencies, and if you even know what it is. Maybe you can explain. You can join in. Just communicate with us. Danny, maybe you've done it. Maybe you've mined Bitcoin in your own bedroom. It sounds very metaphorical, that, doesn't it? But it really isn't. It's now a thing. You can actually mine Bitcoin in the comfort of your own home. But what does it mean? What is it? Riyadh, are you saying, oh, you've won and lost in crypto? Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, this is the tragedy of this, isn't it? For every winner, there are so many losers. Wasn't there like a run on Bitcoin recently? Wasn't it something to do with GameStop? Do you remember that story? Where was it the shares on GameStop, or suddenly that went through the roof because somebody was like, a whole load of kids just started buying the stock in cryptocurrency, and it just pushed the GameStop stock through the roof, and it was faltering. I mean, GameStop was like on its knees, and then basically all of these kids, these gamers, decided that they would raise the value of the stock by buying into it through cryptocurrency. It was a massive story about a year ago. Very interesting. Riyadh says, I had to park it and not look at it anymore because it was just another distraction. Yeah, I know. Sean's saying that wasn't related to Bitcoin. Oh, what, the GameStop story? Well, that was not a Bitcoin story? I'm sure they were using cryptocurrency to buy the stock, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm confusing two stories. But it was kind of amazing, wasn't it? How like kids came to the rescue of their own favorite store. I'm not a gamer, but I did go into a GameStop a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, because I ordered my annual Christmas jumper. Oh, that's right. Riyadh says it was that kind of Reddit Robin Hood thing. Yeah, I remember now. I went into a GameStop because I ordered a Christmas jumper, and it was a Star Wars Christmas jumper, because every year I like to buy a new Christmas sweater, You call it jumper in America? I don't think so. You just call it sweater. With a soft T. Not sweater, it's a soft T, sweater. Maybe replace the T with a D. Sweater. So I bought my Christmas sweater from GameStop. I ordered it online and it was cheaper. It was actually more expensive to have it shipped than the cost of the sweater in the first place. So I ended up going to my local GameStop to pick it up. And I went in and got it, and the guy gave it to me because I'd already prepaid. He gave it to me like this, like, why are you buying this? And he was right. When I got it open, to say polyester is an understatement. This thing was flammable. In the picture, it looked like a lovely woolly Star Wars sweater. In reality, I couldn't tell the difference between the polythene bag it was in and the sweater itself. It was disgusting. I mean, it really was. I was careful not to go near an open flame. Just for Christmas. Sean says, yuck. Yeah, you're telling me. Never again. From now on, I'm going to knit my own Christmas sweater. I think it was $12. I mean, I should have really been... The clue was probably in the purchase price. That this was not going to be like a hand-knitted, lovely Scottish wool sweater. That this was going to be like a piece of polyester garbage. But they'd photographed it so well. It looked so good on the website that I was like, I'm having that. I'm wearing that. So, of course, I wore it through some of the Christmas. And it was so hot. And I was so static. I was literally static. I couldn't go near the Christmas tree because these pine needles would just stick to me. They would literally magnetically jump off of the tree and stick to the sweater. At least it looked like there was more fabric to it because I now was covered in pine needles. When I threw it away, someone said to me, when Christmas is over, you should burn that. I was like, I'm not going to. The emissions would be too bad. There'd be a brand new hole in the ozone layer if I burn this thing. I'm going to have to bury it in concrete in the road with a whole load of nuclear waste, Riyadh. Hi, Jan. Thank you for joining the show. It's 10:26 Pacific, 1:26 Eastern. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. We're asking how Binance became the world's biggest crypto exchange without headquarters or licenses, and asking you if you've ever invested in Bitcoin and how it worked out for you, and why Binance processes more trades now for cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. Each day, $76 billion is traded each day, more than its 4 largest competitors. London Stock Exchange, New York, Hong Kong, more than all of these combined. And it's only when you talk about it in those terms do you realize this is like a serious thing now. Because I thought it was a bit of a joke originally, and now I'm like, now you can buy stuff. You go online and you go shop in Target or something. I mean, I don't know that Target does it, it's just an example. But they literally say to you, do you want to check out with Bitcoin? I'm like, no. Still getting my head around Venmo. If you want to join in this conversation, all you have to do... Oh, Sean says my friend retired by selling his Bitcoin. Well, you've got friends in high places, Sean. I mean, that is impressive. I do like have a recurring dream of winning a lottery and just not working and just hanging out. Is that not like everybody's dream? We were talking the other day about... I was saying that, humans fundamentally need to do something. You couldn't retire and just do nothing. You have to do something. This is why so many people that have retired become philanthropists or charity workers. They do, non-executive directorships or something. They really feel like they have a responsibility to do something. You can't just sit around, just get fat. We need to exercise. We need to move. We need to feel engaged. We need to connect with humanity. All of these things are really important. There's another conversation I want to start, and it's about Tesla. And if you are somebody who is a Tesla driver, then I'm desperate to hear from you. Tesla's now the 3rd biggest car maker in the world. You know that? It's only, I think, Mercedes-Benz, and there's a couple more, maybe BMW. And I'm talking about luxury cars that sell more cars. But we're gonna do our US news update again in just a few 30 seconds or so, and we're gonna find out what's happening across the United States. This is a separate podcast that I do on the Volley Network. It's called US News Update, and so after that we'll talk about Tesla and this new full driving beta mode that severely damaged a Model Y after a crash here in California. So that's on the way next. After this, it's US News Update. It's Friday, November 12. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. The $1 trillion infrastructure bill passed in Congress on Friday is the largest US investment in roads, rail lines, and other transportation networks in decades.
It also gives some members of Joe Biden's administration unprecedented control over how it is spent. Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg will control $126 billion in new spending by year, 1/5 of the new spending authorized by the law. If from the current transportation budget, which mostly doles out most transportation aid to state governments, which decide how and where it is put to use. Buttigieg, a former mayor of
So close. So close. It worked. And then it didn't work. Never mind. We'll keep trying. It's a really nice idea.
Work. Interact with my live daily morning show. Ask your Amazon Echo Show device to open Backchannel.
I can hear myself, and I'm not speaking. Such is the ego of this show. It's like I'm introducing a news bulletin that's read by me. A Tesla Model Y in full self-driving beta mode allegedly crashed on November 3rd in Brea, a city southeast of Los Angeles, marking what is likely to be the first incident involving the company's controversial driver assist feature. No one was injured in the crash, but the vehicle was reportedly severely damaged. The crash was reported to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which has multiple overlapping investigations into Tesla's autopilot system. The incident report appears to have been made by the owner of the Model Y. A spokesperson for the NHTSA did not immediately respond to a request for comment. You see, I have a friend who has a Tesla Model 3, and he doesn't even have the autopilot feature. Like, the car was cheaper because that feature was turned off. And I was like, what's the point in buying a Tesla if it can't self-drive? And he's like, not interested. Don't want that feature. Rather save the money. And like in the future, if I want to turn it on, then I could pay extra and they'll remotely turn it on. And it occurred to me, if you have a Tesla, would you allow it to drive you places? Do you allow it to drive you places? I have been on the freeway and looked to my side passing a Tesla driver, and they are not touching it. They're completely hands-free. And I'm thinking, because this is very interesting. When we drive on the freeway and we see cars, we don't know how many of these cars are actually driving themselves versus being driven by the driver. My car has a thing called adaptive cruise control. So it doesn't steer. I have to steer, but it will keep the car a safe distance from the car in front. It has like a radar on the front, like a laser beam. Invisible, obviously. I'm not shooting laser beams. And it shoots it out, and it measures the distance from the car in front, and it keeps my car at a safe distance. And it will slow the car right down to a stop. I don't have to touch anything. And I often use this feature on the freeway, and sometimes I use it in a traffic jam as well. If I'm just sitting in traffic, rather than doing the whole stop-start thing with the accelerator pedal, I just put it into auto mode, and it does that all for me. So it's taking some of the driving responsibility, but not all of it. I'm still having to steer. I'm still having to be completely conscious of my surroundings. And I don't know, I just worry that Tesla still hasn't got this perfect, have they? Maybe there's no such thing as perfect. It says Tesla's decision to test its full self-driving driver assistance software with untrained vehicle owners on public roads has attracted a massive amount of scrutiny and criticism. Throughout, the company has rolled out and retracted several software updates meant to upgrade the system while also addressing bugs in the software. And there's been many video clips uploaded online showing Tesla owners using FSD beta with varying degrees of success. Some clips show the driver assist system confidently handling complex driving scenarios, while others depict the car drifting into the wrong lane or making other serious mistakes. Have you seen that YouTube video? It went around as a meme on Instagram for a while as well, which was of a Tesla driving along the freeway at high speed and the driver fast asleep. Have you seen that? He was like this. fast asleep. And the car was like, zoom. And I was like, wow, you're going to die. You know, you're taking too much of a risk. But I think some people are so showy-offy about the fact that they've got a car that can drive itself. They're really totally prepared to take that risk. Sean says that has to be faked. I don't think it's faked. I think that they caught up with that guy. I mean, look it up and let me know. Like the guy asleep at the wheel of his Tesla became a viral video a year or two ago. Very interesting. So here in California, every other car seems to be a Tesla in Los Angeles, I mean, just from looking around. Model 3, obviously, is the one that seems to be the most popular because it's the cheapest. When it came out, I think it was $37,000 or maybe $35,000, and then they put the price up a little bit more recently because they included the autopilot system as standard, whereas before it was an option. And now I think it's $40,000. And then the Model Y is the next, the Model Y is the next one. That's like the bigger version of the Model 3. Apparently the reason, because you know those cars spell out sexy. You know that, don't you? So the Model S, Model 3 is the E, Model X, which is the big SUV, and the Model Y. And Elon Musk wanted it to spell sexy. But I think it was Jaguar that had the patent on Model 3. Model E, that's right, the E-type Jag. They had the copyright, I think, so he couldn't call it Model E because that's what he wanted to call the Model 3. So he decided to call it the 3, which is like a backwards E. How do I even know this stuff? I don't know, but I'm sharing it with you. I mean, why not have a Model T and a Model E and a Model S and a Model L and a Model A and have it spelled Tesla? Why have it spelled sexy? It's interesting, isn't it? Maybe Model T belonged to something else. Maybe there was too many copyright infringements involved. Interesting. Anyway, we've been looking at this Tesla vehicle in full self-driving beta mode, severely damaged after a crash in California, and asking, would you trust a self-driving car? Are they even necessary? And if there's a crash, who takes responsibility? Is it the software maker or is it the driver? I mean, I do think on the Tesla, I've only been in a Tesla a couple of times, but I think that if you put it into autopilot, you have to sign a waiver on the screen, check a box that says, I am responsible for this. And then you can drive in self-driving mode. And you as an individual and as the owner of the vehicle or the driver of the car, you take full responsibility for the safety of that car. That's how it must work. It must do. Let me know in the chat. Send me a chat. Just say, and then your message once you've used your wake-up word. Or go to backchannel.tv and you can get into the chat that way as well. No registration required. Very easy. Incidentally, Volley has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Allison Live. They wake you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their one-star cinema review as well. Or you can get inspired by Liv Harrison. She's the one who likes to find out the secrets behind people's success. And also Hal Rudnick, your pal Hal. He's up next in about 20 minutes' time. That follows at 11 o'clock. I'm Anthony Davis. This is The Anthony Davis Show, Monday through Friday between 9 and 11 Pacific. That's 12 and 2 Eastern here in the US. So, we've been talking this morning. A few subjects have come up. Bitcoin, self-driving cars. And in the last kind of 10, 15, 20 minutes of the show, I want to talk about COP26, because, of course, it's the last day of it today. You know, the environmental conference that's happening in Glasgow in the United Kingdom. Car firms have agreed at the conference to end the sale of fossil fuel vehicles by 2040. But the landmark agreement signed by 24 countries also is notable for absences of major manufacturers. It's very interesting to me, this, because the only way this is going to work is if everybody joins in. Everybody. Every major manufacturer, from General Motors and Jaguar, right the way through to Tata. You know Tata? It's an Indian manufacturer. They make like a little miniature vehicle. Tata Cars, T-A-T-A. They sell a lot of cars because there's a lot of Indians. And the cars are so cheap. I think Tata might make the cheapest car in the world. I think they have a car for around the equivalent of about $3,000. A brand new car for about $3,000. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's true. 24 countries and a group of leading car manufacturers have committed to ending the era of fossil fuel-powered vehicles by 2040 or earlier in a major new commitment at COP26. Yes, the agreement to sell only zero-emissions vehicles from this time, unveiled at the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow on Wednesday, includes Canada, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Ireland and the UK, which has already agreed to phase out new petrol and diesel car sales by 2030. Ford, Mercedes, Volvo have already done it. Volvo don't make combustion engine cars anymore. You can't buy a non-electric Volvo anymore. Mercedes-Benz, they're among the car makers to sign the accord, pledging to reach the goal by 2035 in leading markets, as have numerous cities and regional governments, including New York, London, Barcelona, and the Australian Capital Territory. And a further group of countries, I find this very interesting. This really sorts the men from the boys. This is where you really see who's putting their money where their mouth is, right? A further group of countries, including India and Kenya, have agreed to work intensely toward accelerated proliferation of zero-emissions vehicles, while a group of financiers and fleet owners have also vowed to phase out fossil fuel-powered cars. Do you know, when I have conversations with people who drive gas cars about this, and I say, when are you going to buy electric, and they put up a fuss, their argument is a little bit like people, who don't trust the vaccine and they go, well, it's not been tested. Like they have a solitary argument, it's not been tested. It's the same with people who won't drive electric. They're like, well, how do you think the electricity is generated? That's fossil fuel. Or what about the battery technology? That's not biodegradable. They have these kind of excuses that were things a decade ago or more. Like issues that a decade ago. But, the car that I drive, the electric car that I drive, it is produced in a carbon neutral factory. Like the production of the vehicle is carbon neutral. More than 50% of the materials used in the car are completely recyclable. And that you just don't have that with a regular steel car with a combustion engine in it. You just don't. And now the batteries from these cars, especially Teslas, the technology is so good now in these batteries that they will just last forever. Sean says, what car do you have? I have an i3, and I also have a Nissan Leaf from 2013. I'm on my second i3. The first one was like the original 2014 model, and now I'm on a 2017 model. But the battery technology is so good now, these batteries will last not quite forever, but pretty close to. Because the thing is, I never use the full capacity. My car will do like 130 miles in range. I never use that capacity. I can recharge. The most I drive in one sitting is maybe 20, 30 miles? So the batteries will last a long, long time. Outlive the car, probably. But what Tesla have done is that with batteries that are being replaced in old Teslas, they're now going to use those as Powerwall batteries for home energy storage. So you don't even need to worry about the battery anymore because it can be repurposed. I'm actually considering replacing the battery in the Nissan Leaf. That would be great for me because currently the Nissan Leaf does about 50 or 60 miles. And if I get you won't get a new battery, you get a second-hand battery, one that's been in a wreck, I could get 170 miles with a battery replacement from a 24 kilowatt hour to a 40 kilowatt hour, and they just swap it out. It takes them like half a day. It's interesting, isn't it? Do you drive electric? Have you made the switch yet? And if not, are you still using old-fashioned excuses for not driving electric? Saying things like, well, you still have to generate the electricity. Yeah, but increasingly in world markets, electricity is being generated with green energy sources, with wind or solar. Talking of solar. Oh, Sean says nice. Thank you, Sean. Talking of solar, Hyundai, which is a South Korean manufacturer, they also own Kia. Kia and Hyundai. They're very popular here in California, Kia especially. They've just come out with 2 new EVs that I think they're being released next year. One is called the EV6, the Kia EV6, which looks like a fantastic car. It actually looks like a Jaguar I-Pace, but it's like half the price. And the reviews have been amazing for that. I have a friend who runs a YouTube channel called Fully Charged, and it's all about electric cars and electric car reviews. And I was watching the review the other day. But Hyundai, which is the sister company to Kia, they're bringing out a new car called the Ioniq 5. And that one has actually got a solar roof on it. So, and this is for the haters, so not only can you plug it in and charge the battery and get over 300 miles in range, but when the car is parked, especially in a climate like this, here in Southern California, where we have sunshine pretty much all year round, the car is recharging from the power of the sun. They reckon you can get 1,700 miles a year just from the small solar panel on the roof. It's about 3 miles a day. It's the new Hyundai Ioniq 5. These 2 cars, I think, are built on a similar platform. They look amazing. I mean, Kia and Hyundai, typically the cars were like, they were kind of a little bit naff. They weren't great looking cars, but they must have poached their designers. A bit like, I think, Tesla poached designers from Aston Martin and Jaguar. I'm sure that Kia have poached designers. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kia might have poached the designer from Audi. Did I read that? I don't know how I store this information, but I'm sure Kia might have poached a designer from Audi. Anyway, the EV6, the Kia EV6, is the most amazing looking electric car. And it's quite expensive, but it's not anywhere near as expensive as Tesla's or, Model S's or Model Y's. Or Model X's, I mean. And the Hyundai Ioniq 5 has a solar roof as an option. Now, for me, that solves a multitude of sins. Because if you just use your car for pootling around each day, 3 miles of additional charge from your solar roof, and I'm sure they'll be able to improve that with software over time. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Hi, Jessica. Thanks for joining Backchannel on this Friday morning, 10:48 here on the West Coast. It's 1:48 Eastern. I'm Anthony Davis. We're talking about electric vehicles, and this is off the back of Tesla and experimenting with a beta form of self-driving. They're allowing owners to test the beta software by doing self-driving, and one has ended up in a crash in California. And then also we've been looking at this agreement by car firms at COP26 to end the sale of fossil fuel vehicles by 2040. If you are buying a car now, or leasing a car, or buying a car on finance, it has to be electric. You can't buy a gas car now. If you're somebody and you're considering a gas car, you're a bad person. That's my opinion of you. It's not the opinion of Backchannel, it's the opinion of me. You're a bad person. You've got to do it. We have to, all of us. So this agreement to only sell zero emissions vehicles from this point, from 2040, so where are we now? 2021. So that's 19 years away. Is that fast enough? I don't think that's fast enough. I mean, the UK has already agreed to phase out new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. And that's 8 years away. And that, to me, is a much more... That's just a much more realistic target to give people nearly a decade. I mean, they've had this in place for a while now. So what I'm saying to you is that if the UK can do it by 2030, why can't leading countries and manufacturers agree that 2030 is a good cutoff, and why 2040? 19 years, you're kidding me. It says the agreement is also notable for its absences. With the US, China, and Germany, the
behemoths of the global car industry, all declining to sign. Volkswagen and Toyota have also not put their name to the deal, along with BMW, which said there was still considerable uncertainty about the development of global infrastructure to support a complete shift to zero-emissions vehicles. See, this is the worry, is that if everybody has an electric car and is trying to charge their electric car once a week, let's say, the grid, like the national grid that is powering our plug sockets, can't cope with it, just can't keep up. And that's where, like, infrastructure is a thing, and is why, this infrastructure bill is important, I guess. It's because you need to invest in the infrastructure to be able to handle the demand. Toyota said, although we refrain from joining the statement, we share the same spirit and determination to address climate change and remain open to engage and work with stakeholders. Toyota doesn't even have an electric car. There is no electric Toyota. They pioneered hybrid, so the Prius is hybrid, and various hybrid Toyotas, and plenty of gas Toyotas. I mean, if you buy a Camry, which I think is the most popular and the cheapest Toyota you can get, the Camry is a gas car and it's huge, with a big 2-liter engine. It says Toyota will continue to contribute by making the best efforts to achieve carbon neutrality. You don't even make an electric car, although there's a rumor that Apple is developing an electric car, and I think that they secretly signed an agreement with Toyota. So does that mean that the reason that Toyota don't currently make an electric car is because for years now they've had this secret agreement with Apple, and maybe when the Apple car comes out, it's going to be made by Toyota, who, let's face it, are now probably the biggest car manufacturer in the world? If you were to throw a hammer out of the window here in Los Angeles, it would probably land on a Toyota Prius. Those are the odds. Just saying. The British government has hailed the agreement a landmark global agreement, pointed out that in combination with existing pledges to phase out polluting cars, most notably by the European Union, it will cover nearly a third of global car sales. Interesting. Billy's joined us now. Thank you, Billy. Great to know that you're part of the chat and you can message. Just talk to your device, activation word, then say, and then your message. Or you can go to backchannel.tv now as well, and you can chat with us from there. Or if you're keen to watch, YouTube is an option as well. We have a YouTube channel which has a live stream of this show right now. So just go to YouTube, wherever you would find that, and search for Backchannel Anthony Davis, and that will bring up today's stream. Transport accounts for a fifth of global greenhouse gas emissions, and the International Energy Agency has said the sale of fossil fuel-powered cars will have to cease by 2035 if the world is to avoid surpassing dangerous global heating thresholds. So I just don't know that the world is yet ready. And I was saying yesterday, and I actually tweeted to the energy minister, the energy secretary here in the United States, and said, why don't you do a weekly energy briefing at the White House, where you get up on the stage like Fauci does. He does his COVID briefing. Psaki does her press briefing. And the energy secretary could easily do a climate briefing every week. Please do this. Don't do that. It would really help if you did the following. And we were talking yesterday about hanging your washing on a washing line to dry rather than putting it into your dryer. Your dryer probably uses gas. People don't realize that. They presume it's just electricity. It's not, it's gas. A lot of gas dryers still in use. They reckon they're more efficient than electric dryers. We don't need either. So really interesting conversations. Thank you to all of you who've been part of this morning. To Will and to Max and to Billy and Sean, Riyadh, Jessica and Jan and anybody who's joined us this morning. You really have been, it's been amazing to share this Backchannel space with you. Tomorrow's Saturday, so I won't be here, but there'll be something on Backchannel, of course. But I'm back on Monday, so join us then. Next, here on Backchannel, is your pal Hal. Have a great weekend.